Captain Lee Taeho stared at the navigation display and felt his stomach drop. The numbers made no sense. According to the computer, they were 15,000 light-years from Earth. That was impossible. Their mission to survey the Kepler 442 system should have taken them only 50 light-years from home. Commander Kim, run the calculation again, Lee ordered his tactical officer. Kim Jae-wook's fingers danced over his console. His face grew pale as the results appeared. Sir, the readings are correct. We're in completely unknown space. I can't find a single star pattern that matches our charts. The bridge of the Soul's Pride fell silent except for the steady hum of the engines. 200 humans had left Earth 3 weeks ago on what should have been a routine exploration mission. Now they were lost in a part of the galaxy that no human had ever seen. Dr. Park Mi-sun looked up from her science station. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who studied alien life forms, though until today she had never expected to need that skill. Captain, I'm detecting massive energy readings ahead. The patterns suggest advanced technology, very advanced. Lee rubbed his forehead. As captain, he had trained for many emergencies, but getting lost in space had not been one of them. How advanced are we talking about, Doctor? The energy output is incredible. Whatever is out there uses power sources far beyond anything we have on Earth. I think we're looking at alien technology. The words hung in the air like a challenge. First contact with alien life had been humanity's dream for centuries. Now, lost and far from home, they were about to make that dream come true whether they wanted to or not. Sir, called engineer Choi Hai-jin from her station at the back of the bridge. She was the ship's chief engineer, a woman who could fix anything mechanical. I've been checking our hyperspace drive. The damage is worse than I thought. Something went wrong during our jump. The drive overloaded and threw us way off course. Can you fix it? Lee asked. Choi wiped grease from her hands with a cloth. I can, but it will take time. 3 weeks minimum, maybe 4. We need parts I'll have to manufacture from scratch. Lee nodded slowly. They were stuck here until repairs were complete. That meant they would have to deal with whoever owned those energy signatures Dr. Park had detected. Commander Kim, take us closer to those readings, but keep our weapons powered down. We don't want to start a fight with technology that advanced. The Soul's Pride moved forward through space toward whatever waited for them. On the main screen, a structure began to take shape. It was huge beyond imagination, a construction of metal and light that stretched for kilometers in every direction. Strange ships of various sizes moved around it like insects around a hive. It looks like a space station, said Commander Kim. But I've never seen anything that big. There must be millions of beings living there. Dr. Park's console beeped with new readings. Captain, I'm detecting at least 40 different types of life signs aboard that station. 40 different species. This isn't just first contact. We've found an entire galactic community. Ambassador Yoon De-eun stepped forward. She was the ship's diplomatic officer, trained to handle first contact situations, though nothing in her training had prepared her for this scale of alien civilization. Captain, request permission to prepare a first contact team. We need to approach this carefully. Lee agreed. Take Dr. Park with you for scientific support. And Ambassador, remember our protocols. We come in peace. We're explorers, not conquerors. The team prepared their shuttle while the Soul's Pride held position. Near the massive station, Lee watched them go and hoped Earth's first contact with alien life would go smoothly. It did not. The shuttle docked at what appeared to be a receiving bay. The station's interior was breathtaking. Corridors stretched in every direction, filled with beings unlike anything from Earth's imagination. Some walked on 2 legs like humans, others on 4 or 6 or 8. Some flew through the air on wings or floated using unknown technology. But something was wrong. As soon as the human team stepped out of their shuttle, alien guards surrounded them. These beings were tall and armored, carrying weapons that hummed with energy. One of the aliens spoke in a voice that was translated by their universal communication system. New arrivals will report for processing. Surrender is required for all species entering hegemony space. Ambassador Yoon blinked in confusion. I'm sorry, but there seems to be a misunderstanding. We're explorers from Earth. We don't need to surrender. We're here peacefully. The alien guard's expression, visible through his helmet's clear visor, showed confusion. All species surrender upon contact with the hegemony. This is law. Resistance results in destruction. Dr. Park whispered to the ambassador. I think we've stumbled into some kind of empire. They expect us to submit to their rule. The team was escorted through corridors filled with aliens who watched them with curious eyes. Many of these beings looked tired and defeated. Their shoulders slumped as they went about their work. The humans began to understand that this was not a happy place. They were brought before an administrator named Vexithari. She was a tall being with blue-gray skin and large eyes. She sat behind a desk covered with documents and data screens. When she spoke, her voice carried the tone of someone used to being obeyed. I am Administrator Vexithari of the Galactic Hegemony. You are representatives of a new species discovered in our territory. Standard procedure requires immediate surrender and integration into the Empire. What is your species' formal surrender statement? Ambassador Yoon looked at Dr. Park, then back at the administrator. We don't have a surrender statement. We're not surrendering. We're explorers who got lost. Once our ship is repaired, we plan to return home. Vexthari's large eyes widened. In her long career, she had processed the surrender of dozens of species. Some surrendered immediately upon seeing hegemony power. Others required demonstrations of force, but none had ever simply said no. I do not understand, she said slowly. All species surrender. It is how the galaxy works. The strong rule, the weak obey. This has been law for 3,000 years. Not on Earth, Ambassador Yoon replied. On our world, people govern themselves. We don't have emperors or kings anymore. We choose our own leaders. The concept seemed to break something in Vexthari's mind. She stared at the humans as if they had claimed the ability to fly by flapping their arms. Choose leaders? That is impossible. Leaders are strong. Followers are weak. The weak cannot choose. Dr. Park stepped forward. As a scientist, she was used to explaining complex ideas. With respect, Administrator, strength comes in many forms. Sometimes the strongest thing to do is work together instead of fighting. Sometimes the best leaders are those who serve others instead of ruling them. These words spread through the station faster than the humans could have imagined. Alien beings who had accepted slavery for generations suddenly heard someone suggest that cooperation might be stronger than domination. The idea was dangerous to the very foundation of the hegemony. Back on the Soul's Pride, Captain Lee waited for his team to return. He was growing worried when his communications officer, Lee Soo-min, picked up strange signals from the station. Captain, I'm hearing a lot of chatter from that station. Multiple languages, but the translation computers are picking up some interesting words. Freedom, choice, rebellion. I think our people have stirred up trouble. Lee smiled grimly. That sounds like humans. We do have a habit of asking uncomfortable questions. On the station, Administrator Vexithari was dealing with her first crisis in decades. Several species had stopped reporting for their daily work, assignments. Others were asking questions about the hegemony's authority. Worst of all, some were demanding to speak with the humans who had refused to surrender. She called her superiors for guidance. The response was swift and clear. A hegemony battle fleet was being dispatched to deal with the situation. The humans would surrender or be destroyed. The rebellious thoughts they had sparked would be crushed along with anyone who entertained them. But the humans had no intention of surrendering. When Ambassador Yoon and her team returned to their ship, they briefed Captain Lee on what they had found. The galaxy was ruled by an empire that controlled thousands of worlds through fear and overwhelming force. Species that resisted were destroyed. Those that surrendered became slaves. They want us to bow down and accept their rule, Ambassador, Yoon explained. They literally cannot understand why we won't. Captain Lee looked around his bridge at his crew. These were Earth's best and brightest, people who had volunteered to explore unknown space in humanity's name. They had not come this far to kneel before alien masters. Commander Kim, what's our tactical situation? Kim checked his displays. Not good, sir. Long-range sensors show a large fleet approaching. Multiple ships, all much bigger than ours. Their technology appears to be centuries ahead of anything we have. Engineer Choi spoke up from her station. Captain, I can have the hyperspace drive running in 2 days if I push my teams hard. We could escape. Lee considered this. They could run back to Earth and report what they had found. But that would leave the beings on the station to face the hegemony's anger alone. It would also mean that humanity's first contact with galactic civilization would be remembered as the moment they ran away. No, he said finally. We're staying. These people have lived under. Admiral Korvash arrived at the trade station expecting to find another routine conquest. In his long career, he had overseen the submission of 47 different species. The process was always the same. Show overwhelming force, demand surrender, accept submission, move on to the next target. It had worked for 3,000 years. But something was wrong. His sensors showed that 3 minor species on the station had stopped paying their tribute to the hegemony. Worse, they had declared themselves independent. No species had ever done that before. Communications, get me Administrator Vexithari immediately, he commanded from his flagship's bridge. The administrator's face appeared on his screen. She looked tired and confused, not at all like the efficient bureaucrat he remembered. Admiral, thank the void you're here. We have a situation unlike anything in recorded history. Explain, Korvash demanded. A new species arrived 3 days ago. They call themselves humans. They refuse to surrender. But that's not the worst part. They're spreading ideas that are destabilizing the entire station. The Admiral's 4 eyes narrowed. What kind of ideas? They claim beings can govern themselves. They say cooperation is stronger than domination. They treat all species as equals regardless of their strength or technology. Admiral, they're teaching rebellion without meaning to. This made no sense to Korvash. He had studied military history for decades. Empires fell when they grew weak, or faced stronger enemies. They did not fall because someone suggested that slaves should choose their own masters. On the Soul's Pride, Dr. Song Kyung-min was having the time of her life. As a cultural anthropologist, she had always dreamed of studying alien societies. Now she found herself in the middle of the greatest cultural exchange in human history. Captain, she reported to Lee Tae-ho during their morning briefing, what we're seeing on that station is incredible. The hegemony maintains control through a rigid caste system. Each species has a specific role. Some are warriors, some are workers, some are administrators. No one is allowed to change roles or question the system. But they're questioning it. Now? Lee asked. Oh yes. When our people started treating everyone equally, it shattered their understanding of how society works. Lieutenant Bae Soo-jin taught some alien children a game where everyone takes turns being the leader. It sounds simple, but these children had never conceived that leadership could rotate based on consensus instead of strength. The captain smiled. Soo-jin was a good officer who loved working with children. It was just like her to start a revolution by teaching kids how to play fair. Dr. Song continued her report. Medical Officer Han Woo-sung is causing even more disruption. He's treating patients from all species without regard to their social status. On this station, medical care is distributed based on your caste level. Han just walks up to whoever looks sick and helps them. And they're letting him? They don't know how to stop him. Their entire system assumes that everyone knows their place. Han doesn't know his place because he rejects the idea that people should have fixed places at all. Across the station, Han Woo-sung worked in what the aliens called the lower medical bay. This was where the working castes received basic treatment for injuries and illness. The equipment was old, and many supplies were missing. The alien medical staff seemed resigned to doing poor work with poor tools. Han could not accept this. He had taken an oath to help all people regardless of who they were or where they came from. He brought advanced medical supplies from the Soul's Pride and showed the alien doctors new techniques for treating patients. Why do you work in the lower bay? Asked Zilthar, a young alien doctor who had been assigned to the lowest medical caste. Your people have advanced technology. You could work in the upper bay with the elite patients. Han looked confused. I work where people need help. These patients need help just as much as anyone else, maybe more since they have worse equipment. But they are lower caste. Their lives matter less. No, Han said firmly. Every life matters the same. That's the first rule of medicine on Earth. You help whoever needs help. Zilthar stared at him. In her entire career, she had never heard anyone suggest that a worker's life had the same value as an administrator's life. The idea was revolutionary. Meanwhile, pilot Nam Soo-hyun and gunner Lim Ye-un were causing their own problems. They had taken their shuttle to help move supplies around the station. During one of these trips, they encountered a cargo hauler, being abused by his overseers. The hauler was a member of the Kethrin species built for heavy lifting, but treated as nothing more than living machinery. His overseers beat him when he moved too slowly and gave him barely enough food to survive. "Hey!" Ye-un shouted when she saw the beating. "Stop that!" The overseers looked at her in surprise. "This does not concern you, alien. Return to your duties." "Like hell," Nam muttered. He and Ye-un had grown up in a Korea that remembered what it felt like to be oppressed. They were not about to watch it happen to someone else. They modified their shuttle's tractor beam to help the Kethrin move his cargo more easily. When the overseers protested, Nam simply said, "You want the job done faster? This is how you do it faster." The efficiency improvements were undeniable, but they had an unexpected side effect. Other cargo haulers saw that the work could be made easier with better tools and organization. They began asking why their overseers insisted on using methods that made everyone suffer. Word of these incidents spread throughout the station faster than anyone expected. The aliens had communication networks that carried information across the entire structure in minutes. Soon, beings who had never questioned their place in the hierarchy were hearing stories about creatures who treated everyone as equals. Administrator Vexthari found herself dealing with requests and demands she had never heard before. Workers wanted better safety equipment. Medical staff requested permission to treat patients from other castes. Even some of her own administrative assistants began asking why certain species were considered naturally superior to others. "These humans are destroying everything," she complained to Admiral Korvash during their next communication. "They don't mean to cause trouble, but their very presence is chaos. They act like every being is equal. They help anyone who asks for help. They share their knowledge freely. It's madness." "Then we will show them why madness fails," the Admiral replied. "Cut off all supplies to the trade station. No food, no fuel, no raw materials. When the inhabitants start to starve, they will remember why the strong must rule the weak." The blockade began immediately. Hegemony ships surrounded the station and turned away any vessels trying to bring supplies. Within hours, the station's administrators announced that emergency rationing would begin. But something unexpected happened. Instead of turning against the humans who had caused this crisis, many of the station's inhabitants began organizing to help each other. They shared food and resources in ways that crossed traditional caste boundaries. They worked together to improve efficiency and reduce waste. Captain Lee received reports of these developments with growing concern and pride. "They're learning to cooperate instead of just following orders," he told his senior staff. "But they're also about to face starvation because of us." Intelligence specialist Kwon Min Seok had been analyzing hegemony communications and tactics. "Captain, I've discovered something interesting. This empire is incredibly powerful, but their strength comes from fear and resignation, not from loyalty or effective organization. Their subject species obey because they believe resistance is hopeless. What happens when they stop believing that?" asked Commander Kim. "That's what we're about to find out," Kwon replied. Engineer Choi reported that the hyperspace drive repairs were ahead of schedule. "I can have us ready to jump in 18 hours, Captain. We could escape before the Admiral makes good on his threats." Lee walked to the bridge's main view screen. The trade station hung in space like a small city, home to millions of beings who had never known freedom. Around it, the hegemony fleet waited like vultures, ready to crush any sign of independence. "Dr. Song," he asked the cultural anthropologist, "in your professional opinion, what happens to these people if we leave?" Song's face was grim. "The hegemony will make an example of them. Anyone who helped us or listened to our ideas will be punished. They'll probably destroy parts of the station to show other worlds what happens when you question their authority. And if we stay, we'll probably all die. But these people will know that someone stood with them when it mattered. That knowledge might survive even if we don't. Lee made his decision. Communications. Open a channel to the entire station, all frequencies. When the channel opened, Lee's voice carried to every corner of the massive structure. This is Captain Lee Teho, of the Earthship Soul's Pride. I know many of you have heard about my people and the ideas we've shared. I want you to know that we didn't come here to start a war or build an empire. We came as explorers seeking knowledge and friendship. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. The hegemony wants us to surrender and accept their rule. They believe that strength gives them the right to control everyone else. We believe that every thinking being has the right to choose their own path. We will not surrender these beliefs, and we will not abandon anyone who shares them. The message was, here. Engineer Choi Hee-jin wiped the sweat from her forehead and looked at her diagnostic screen one last time. The hyperspace drive showed green across all systems. After 3 weeks of desperate work, the Soul's Pride was ready to escape. Captain, she reported over the comm system, the drive is operational. We can jump to hyperspace whenever you give the order. Captain Lee Teho stood on the bridge watching the evacuation shuttles moving between his ship and the trade station. Thousands of aliens were being moved to safety, but the process was slow. Too slow. How much more time do we need to get everyone off that station? He asked. Ambassador Yoon looked up from her coordination console. At least 12 more hours. Sir, maybe 15. There are so many different species with different environmental needs. We're doing our best, but she didn't need to finish. They all knew that Admiral Korvash would not wait much longer. The hegemony fleet had been holding position for 2 days, but their patience was clearly ending. Long-range sensors showed more ships arriving every hour. Commander Kim studied his tactical display with the focus of a man trying to solve an impossible puzzle. Captain, their fleet now numbers 200 ships, cruisers, destroyers, battleships, and that massive dreadnought that serves as the Admiral's flagship. We're outgunned by about 1,000 to 1. What are our advantages? Lee asked. Kim almost laughed. Advantages? Sir, we're a single exploration vessel against the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. We have no advantages. Everyone has advantages, Lee said calmly. We just need to find them. Dr. Park Mi-sun looked up from her science station. Captain, I've been studying the station's structure. It's incredibly complex, built over centuries by dozens of different species. There are maintenance, tunnels, cargo channels, and debris fields from old construction projects. If we had to fight here, we could use that complexity to our advantage. How? Hide and seek, basically. Their big ships are powerful, but they're also slow and predictable. We're smaller and faster. In all that structural chaos, we might be able to avoid direct confrontation. Communications Officer Lee Soo-min interrupted with an urgent message. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Korvash. He's demanding immediate surrender. Put him through. The view screen filled with the image of the hegemony, Admiral. He was the imposing figure, tall and armored, with the bearing of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 3,000 years of imperial authority. Human Captain, I am Admiral Korvash of the Galactic Hegemony. Your presence in our territory has caused unacceptable disruption. You will surrender your vessel immediately and submit to imperial judgment. Your passengers will be returned to their proper stations and castes. This is your final warning. Lee looked around his bridge at his crew. These were good people who had volunteered to explore the unknown in humanity's name. They deserved better than to die in a hopeless battle, far from home. But they also deserved the right to choose their own fate. Admiral, Lee replied, with respect, we decline your offer. We are explorers, not conquerors. We came here by accident and will leave when we're ready. We will not surrender, and we will not abandon the beings who have asked for our protection. Korvash's expression showed genuine confusion. Protection? You cannot protect them. I have 200 warships, you have one small vessel. Simple mathematics dictates your defeat. Mathematics aren't everything, Admiral. Sometimes the equation changes when people decide they're willing to fight for what they believe in. Belief does not stop plasma cannons, human. You have 1 hour to reconsider. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Well, said Commander Kim, I guess we're doing this. Orders, sir? Lee took a deep breath. His next decision would either save his crew or doom them all. But some choices were more important than survival. All hands battle stations. Kim, start moving us into the station's debris field. Use every piece of cover you can find. Choi, I need maximum power to engines and shields. We're going to give these people the best fight of their lives. The Soul's Pride moved deep into the complex structure surrounding the trade station. The Tau ship wove between massive support beams and construction debris, using the station's bulk to hide from enemy sensors. Admiral Korvash watched this maneuver with growing irritation. What are they doing? Are they trying to use the station as a shield? Don't they realize we can simply destroy the entire structure? Sir, his tactical officer reported, destroying the station would eliminate millions of hegemony subjects and significant economic resources. Command would not approve such losses unless absolutely necessary. The Admiral understood. The humans had chosen their battlefield well. By hiding among the station's civilian population, they had limited the hegemony's options. It was a clever strategy, but ultimately pointless. Begin precision strikes, target the human vessel only. Avoid damaging station infrastructure. The battle began with the fury of a thunderstorm. Hegemony ships moved in coordinated formations, their energy weapons lighting up space with deadly fire. But their target refused to hold still. The Soul's Pride darted between structures like a small fish hiding in a coral reef. Captain Lee had given control to his best pilot, Nam Soo-hyun, who flew the ship with an artist's touch. She used every piece of debris, every structural beam, every maintenance tunnel to confuse enemy targeting systems. Incoming missiles, starboard, side, called Kim from his tactical station. I see them, Nam replied calmly. She rolled the ship behind a massive cargo platform, just as the missiles exploded where they had been seconds before. Chief Petty Officer Park Jin-woo coordinated damage, control from the engine room. Every time the ship took a hit, his teams raced to repair the damage. Bulkheads were sealed, power was rerouted, fires were extinguished. The Soul's Pride stayed in the fight through sheer determination and skill, but they were taking damage faster than they could repair it. Shield generators at 60%, reported Engineer Choi. Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7. We can't keep this up much longer. The battle had been raging for 6 hours. The Soul's Pride had survived by never staying in one place long, enough for the enemy to target them effectively. But the hegemony fleet was learning, adapting their tactics to account for the human ship's mobility. Communications Officer Lee Soo-min worked frantically at her station, broadcasting everything that happened across all frequencies. Captain, I'm getting responses from across hegemony space. Thousands of worlds are listening to our transmissions. They're hearing someone fight back for the first time in millennia. On his flagship, Admiral Korvash was growing frustrated. His fleet had fired thousands of shots at the human vessel, but the small ship continued to dodge and weave through the station's structure like a ghost. Worse, his own sensors were detecting unusual activity on dozens of hegemony worlds. The human resistance was inspiring rebellions across the Empire. Sir, his communications officer reported nervously. We're receiving reports of uprisings on 17 different worlds. Subject species are demanding the same treatment their local humans received. Some are even declaring independence. Impossible. There are no other humans in hegemony space. No, sir, but they're claiming to follow human principles of freedom and self-governance. The ideas are spreading faster than our intelligence networks can track them. Korvash realized that he was not just fighting one ship. He was fighting an idea that threatened the very foundation of imperial rule. And ideas, he was learning, were much harder to destroy than starships. Aboard the Soul's Pride, Dr. Jong Hyun-woo monitored intercepted hegemony communications from his psychology station. Captain, their command structure is showing signs of strain. They're receiving conflicting orders from different sectors. Some admirals want to negotiate, others want to escalate. They've never faced sustained resistance before and they don't know how to handle it. Good, Lee replied. Confusion is our friend right now. But their friends were few and their enemies were many. The Soul's Pride had been fighting for 8 hours, and their luck was running out. A coordinated attack by 6 hegemony cruisers finally landed multiple hits on the human ship's hull. Emergency alarms rang throughout the vessel as major systems failed. The artificial gravity fluctuated, lights flickered, and smoke filled several corridors. Technical specialist Oh Chang-min worked desperately to protect the ship's computer core. This system contained humanity's entire database of science, philosophy, art, and history. If the Soul's Pride was destroyed, this knowledge might be all that remained of Earth's first contact with galactic civilization. Captain, Chang-min reported, the computer core is secure, but I'm detecting cascade failures throughout the ship. We've got maybe 20 minutes before total systems failure. Lee looked around his bridge. His crew was exhausted. His ship was dying, and the enemy fleet was closing in for the kill. But they had achieved something incredible. For 12 hours, one human ship had held off the entire hegemony fleet while protecting millions of civilians. More importantly, they had shown the galaxy that the Empire could be fought. Communications, open a channel. All frequencies. Channel open, sir. Lee's voice carried across space to every listening receiver in the galaxy. This is Captain Lee Tae-ho of the Ear. The computer core drifted through space like a metal seed, carrying the dreams of an entire species. Technical specialist Oh Chang-min had programmed it well before his death. The core's adaptive translation protocols activated automatically, broadcasting humanity's knowledge in thousands of languages across the galactic communication network. On the industrial world of Kepler-7, a RELAC engineer named Tok Han received the transmission while repairing mining equipment. The RELAC were natural builders, but the hegemony had limited their technology to keep them dependent on imperial supply chains. Now, human engineering manuals filled Tok Han's personal datapad with designs and techniques far beyond anything his people had been allowed to learn. By the void, he whispered to his work partner Jen Cole. Look at this. The humans show how to build power generators using materials we can find on any asteroid. We don't need to import energy cells from the core worlds anymore. Jen Cole studied the human blueprints with growing excitement. These designs are incredible, simple, efficient, and they can be built with basic tools. Why were we never taught this? Because, Tok Han said slowly, understanding dawning on him. They wanted us to need them. Within days, RELAC engineers across their world were building human-designed equipment in secret workshops. Their manufacturing capabilities improved dramatically as they discovered efficient techniques that had been hidden from them for centuries. Soon they realized they could produce everything they needed without importing goods from other hegemony worlds. The economic implications were staggering. If the RELAC became self-sufficient, they would no longer need to trade their labor for basic necessities. They could choose what to produce and who to trade with. They could choose to be free. On the artistic world of Melodia Prime, the Zephyrians had served as the hegemony's propaganda creators for over 1,000 years. Their natural musical and visual talents were channeled into making art that glorified imperial rule and encouraged submission to authority. Narration was a young Zephyrian, artist who had never known creative freedom. Every song she wrote, every image she created had to be approved by hegemony censors. Her people's rich cultural heritage had been almost completely erased, replaced by imperial themes and messages. When the human database reached Melodia Prime, Narration discovered something that changed her understanding of art forever. Human, creative works came in every possible form and explored every conceivable emotion. Humans wrote songs about love, loss, hope, rebellion, peace, war, and 1,000 other topics. They painted images that celebrated individual expression instead of state power. This is what art should be, she told her friend Velthara as they secretly viewed human paintings on a hidden screen. Look at this piece. The human artist painted their own emotions, their own vision. They didn't ask permission. They didn't Follow official guidelines. They just created. Velthera studied a human sculpture that depicted abstract concepts of freedom and growth. But if artists create whatever they want, how does society maintain order? Maybe, Narration said carefully, order isn't as important as truth. The human database contained detailed analyses of how creative freedom actually strengthened societies by encouraging innovation, emotional expression, and cultural diversity. Dr. Shin Yoonji's research on human psychology showed that suppressing creativity led to depression, resentment, and social instability. Within weeks, underground Zephyrian art movements began creating works that explored their own cultural history and personal experiences. These pieces spread through hidden networks, reminding the Zephyrians of who they had been before the hegemony arrived. But the most dangerous ideas were spreading among the Empire's administrators and officials. Administrator Vexathari had kept a recording of her first conversation with Captain Lee Taeho. She played it over and over, trying to understand how someone could simply refuse to acknowledge imperial authority. The human had treated her as an equal, not as a superior or subordinate. He had spoken to her as one thinking being to another. This memory haunted her as she dealt with the growing unrest on her station. More species were questioning their assigned roles. Work crews were organizing to improve their conditions. Medical staff were demanding the right to treat patients regardless of caste status. Traditional hegemony policy was clear: crush resistance with overwhelming force. But Vexathari found herself reluctant to order the execution of beings whose only crime was asking for better treatment. She accessed the human database and discovered Dr. Song Kyung-min's studies on cultural anthropology. The human scientist explained how different societies could organize themselves based on cooperation instead of domination. She showed examples of communities where leaders served their people instead of ruling over them. Impossible, Vexathari muttered as she read, but the evidence was overwhelming. Humans had created stable, prosperous societies without rigid caste systems or absolute rulers. They had proven that beings could govern themselves if given the chance. For the first time in her career, Vexathari began to question whether the hegemony's methods were necessary or even effective. Similar doubts were spreading throughout the imperial hierarchy. Military officers discovered human tactical manuals that emphasized protecting civilian populations instead of controlling them. Scientists found research showing that open exchange of knowledge led to faster technological progress than restrictive security measures. Even some planetary governors began to wonder if their worlds might be more prosperous with less imperial oversight. Grand Hegemon Jektar received these reports with growing alarm from his palace on the core world of Hegemonia. He had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years by maintaining the simple principle that resistance was futile. No species had ever successfully challenged imperial authority because everyone understood that defeat was inevitable. Now, a single, human ship had shown the galaxy that the Empire could bleed. Worse, human ideas were spreading faster than imperial forces could contain them. These concepts are like a plague, he told his council of advisors. Wherever they spread, loyalty to the Empire weakens. Worlds that have been peaceful for centuries are now questioning our authority. Defense Minister Kralthox studied the latest intelligence reports. 17 worlds have declared independence. 43 others have stopped paying tribute. Rebellion is spreading to sectors that haven't seen unrest in millennia. The human's computer core is still broadcasting, and we can't stop the transmissions without shutting down the entire galactic communication network. Then shut it down, the Grand Hegemon ordered. Sir, that would cripple trade and military coordination across the Empire. Our own forces depend on those networks. Jektar realized he was facing an impossible choice. He could preserve the communication systems that held his empire together and allow human ideas to continue spreading, or he could shut down those systems and risk fragmenting his own government. Cultural advisor Yex Mina offered a different perspective. Grand Hegemon, perhaps we should study these human concepts more carefully. If we understand why their ideas are so appealing, we might be able to counter them more effectively. You want us to learn from these rebels? I want us to understand our enemy. The humans claim that beings can govern themselves. Perhaps we should examine what happens when this theory is put into practice. Jektar approved limited studies of human governmental systems, but the results only made his situation worse. The research showed that societies based on cooperation and individual choice often outperformed authoritarian systems in terms of economic growth, technological development, and social stability. If the humans were right about governance, then the hegemony had been maintaining order through inefficient and unnecessary oppression. The empire's subjects had obeyed, not because imperial rule was beneficial, but because they had been taught that alternatives were impossible. Now they were learning that alternatives were not only possible, but potentially superior. On distant worlds, resistance movements began forming using human-inspired tactics. They didn't try to build their own armies or fight pitched battles against imperial forces. Instead, they focused on economic disruption, information warfare, and psychological pressure. The Vorthan Rebellion on Rimworld 7 followed Dr. Park, Mison's studies of successful resistance movements from human history. They organized general strikes that shut down mining operations. They used hidden transmitters to broadcast messages of freedom to other worlds. Most importantly, they demonstrated that imperial forces could not brutally suppress entire populations without destroying the economic value of those worlds. The Kethran Uprising used engineer Choi Hyejin's technical manuals to sabotage imperial equipment and communication systems. They didn't destroy these systems completely, but made them unreliable enough to disrupt imperial operations and demonstrate that the empire was not all-powerful. Each successful act of resistance inspired others. The human example had shown that the hegemony could be challenged. Now species across the galaxy were discovering their own ways to reclaim their freedom. Grand Hegemon Jektar faced reports of spreading rebellion with increasing desperation. His advisors recommended increasingly extreme measures: orbital bombardment of rebel worlds, mass executions of suspected dissidents, complete military. The exploration vessel Busan's Hope dropped out of hyperspace exactly where the Soul's Pride had disappeared 2 years earlier. Captain Shin Do-yoon studied the sensor readings with growing confusion. According to Earth's calculations, this should have been empty space near the edge of human exploration range. Instead, his sensors showed massive energy signatures indicating advanced alien technology throughout the entire system. Navigation, confirm our position, Captain Shin ordered. Lieutenant Ryu Sang-ho checked his instruments twice before responding. Position confirmed, sir. We're exactly where the Soul's Pride should have emerged from their jump to Kepler 442. But these readings suggest a major civilization in the area. Dr. Kang Seo-jin, the ship's specialist in interspecies communication, looked up from her analysis station. Captain, I'm detecting communication signals in multiple alien languages. Some of the transmissions mention humans specifically. I think we found what happened to the Soul's Pride. Captain Shin felt a chill run down his spine. The Soul's Pride had carried 200 of Earth's best people on what should have been a routine survey mission. If they had encountered alien civilization, why hadn't they returned home to report it? Dr. Kang, can you translate any of those transmissions? Working on it, sir. The linguistic patterns are incredibly complex, but I'm getting fragments. Something about freedom, resistance, and human philosophy? The Busan's Hope moved cautiously through the system toward the source of the strongest signals. What they found defied every expectation they had brought from Earth. A massive space station hung in orbit around a small moon, but it was clearly under siege. Dozens of alien warships surrounded the structure, while smaller vessels moved between them, in complex patterns that suggested ongoing negotiations rather than active combat. Sir, called Communications Officer Moon Ji-hai, we're being hailed by multiple sources. Some of the transmissions are coming from the alien fleet, others from the station itself. Put the station through first. The main view screen filled with the image of a tall, blue-skinned alien with large eyes. When she spoke, the universal translator rendered her words in accented but understandable Korean. Human vessel, I am Administrator Vexithari of the Free Station Collective. Are you here to continue the work of your predecessor, Captain Lee Tae-ho? Captain Shin exchanged glances with his senior officers. I'm Captain Shin Do-yoon of the Earthship Busan's Hope. We're searching for the Soul's Pride and her crew. Can you tell us what happened to them? Bexthari's expression became solemn. Captain Lee Tae-ho and his crew died as heroes 2 years ago, fighting to protect the inhabitants of this station from hegemony forces. Their sacrifice inspired a revolution that has spread across the galaxy. In their memory, we declared ourselves free from imperial rule. The words hit the bridge like a physical blow. 200 humans had died fighting in a war that Earth didn't even know existed. I need to speak with whoever is in charge here, Captain Shin said carefully. That would be our council. We no longer have single rulers. Captain Lee taught us that beings govern themselves best when they share power equally. Over the next several hours, Captain Shin and his crew learned the incredible story of what had happened after the Soul's Pride accidentally entered hegemony space. They heard how human ideas of democracy and individual rights had spread across the galaxy like wildfire. They discovered that entire sectors had declared independence based on principles that Earth took for granted. Dr. Im Hyo-jung, the Busan Z Hope's medical officer, worked alongside alien doctors who had learned human healing techniques from medical officer Han Woo-sung's broadcasts. Engineer Ryu Sang-ho found himself consulting with beings who had built impossible devices using human technical manuals. But the situation was far from stable. Colonel An Tae-gun, commander of the Busan's Hope's Marine Detachment, studied tactical reports from across the galaxy. Captain, there's a war happening out there. The hegemony is fighting rebel movements on hundreds of worlds. Some battles are being won by species using human military tactics. Others are being lost to imperial forces that have adapted to counter-human strategies. How many people are dying because of ideas that came from Earth? Captain Shin asked quietly. Diplomat Moon Ji-hai had been coordinating with various faction representatives. Sir, it's impossible to calculate exact numbers, but we're talking about billions of casualties across multiple sectors. The rebels say they're fighting for freedom. The imperial forces say they're maintaining order. Both sides claim to be following human examples. Captain Shin realized that Earth's first contact with galactic civilization had created a crisis that spanned thousands of worlds. Humanity had accidentally become the focal point of the largest conflict in recorded galactic history. Sir, Dr. Kang reported, I'm receiving a priority transmission from Grand Hegemon Jektar himself. He wants to negotiate directly with Earth's representatives. Put him through. The being who appeared on their screen was ancient beyond human comprehension. His voice carried the weight of 3 millennia of absolute rule, but there was something different in his manner. Something that might have been desperation. Human captain, the Grand Hegemon said, I am Jektar, ruler of the galactic hegemony. Your species has brought chaos to my empire. Worlds that were peaceful for thousands of years now burn with rebellion. I offer you a choice. Help me restore order, or watch the galaxy tear itself apart in civil war. Captain Shin studied the alien ruler carefully. What kind of help are you asking for? Use your authority as representatives of the human homeworld to command these rebels to surrender. Tell them that Earth does not support their rebellion. In exchange, I will grant your species a protected status within the Empire. You may govern your own world as you see fit, but you will not interfere with galactic affairs. It was an incredible offer. Earth could join the galactic community as an autonomous member of the largest empire in history. All they had to do was abandon the beings who had fought and died in humanity's name. Captain Shin looked around his bridge at officers who represented the best of human values. These were people who had volunteered to explore unknown space in search of knowledge and understanding. They had not come here to become galactic politicians or military commanders, but they had found themselves in a position where their choices would affect the fate of billions of beings across the galaxy. Grand Hegemon, Captain Shin said slowly, I appreciate your offer, but I don't think you understand how humans make decisions. We don't have emperors or absolute rulers. I can't command Earth's government to support your empire, and I certainly can't order other species to surrender their freedom. Then you choose chaos over order. I choose to let beings make their own choices. That's what humans do. The transmission ended with the Grand Hegemon's obvious frustration. Within hours, the hegemony fleet began moving toward the station in attack formation, but something unexpected happened. Instead of immediately opening fire, Admiral Korvash requested direct communication with Captain Shin. "Human Captain," the Admiral said, "I fought your predecessor 2 years ago. Captain Lee Tae-ho was a worthy opponent who died with honor, but his death accomplished nothing except to inspire more death. How many more must die for these abstract concepts of freedom?" Captain Shin considered the question carefully. "Admiral, how many died to maintain your empire's rule? How many species were conquered and enslaved? How many cultures were destroyed to create your version of order?" "That was different. We brought stability to a chaotic galaxy." "Did you? Or did you just hide the chaos under a layer of fear?" The conversation continued for hours, broadcast across the system for all to hear. Captain Shin found himself defending human principles not through military force, but through patient explanation of why beings should have the right to choose their own governments. Dr. No Yu-jin worked with medical teams from multiple species to treat wounded from both sides of the conflict. She demonstrated human medical ethics by refusing to distinguish between imperial forces and rebels. Everyone who needed help received it. Engineer Ryu Sang-ho helped resistance movements improve their technology while also sharing defensive innovations that could protect civilian populations from military attacks. His work saved lives on both sides of the expanding conflict. As days passed, something remarkable began to happen. Instead of escalating into another violent confrontation, the situation began to evolve into the galaxy's first large-scale diplomatic negotiation. Species that had been enemies for centuries found themselves working together to solve common problems. Imperial administrators discovered that some rebel proposals actually improved efficiency and reduced unrest. Rebel leaders learned that some imperial systems had been developed to prevent chaos rather than simply maintain control. Captain Shin realized that Earth had accidentally provided the galaxy with something it had never possessed, a neutral mediator that no faction could claim as their own. "We're not here to rule anyone or replace existing governments," he announced in a broadcast that reached across the galaxy. "We're here as friends and partners. Every species, every world, every individual has the right to choose their own path. But choice works best when everyone has accurate information and peaceful options." The negotiations that